Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Severely Mame, and today I wanted to take you on a little bit of a journey of one of my latest makes. So I was very excited when on Halloween my friend Jess, also known as Duchess of Hutch on Instagram, had posted her Halloween look for this year. It was a beautiful dress made by Spidora Vintage Inspired, who I have talked about a bunch on this channel, paired with a witch hat that she had made herself. Now, this witch hat was more fashion than Halloween, and in the post, she said, I'll post a tutorial on how I made this later this week. So I was very excited. She looked amazing, and I was so excited to see what this tutorial was and see if I could make this hat. Now, as you can see, I am wearing it now. I have done it. She posted her tutorial on Instagram, and I asked her if she minded if I turned that photo tutorial into a video tutorial here on YouTube. She, of course, said yes, which is why I'm doing it today, and I am very excited to show you the process in how I made this 1938 tilt style hat. Now, Jess originally referenced this catalog photo from 1938. Up in this corner, it has a witch-style hat with more of a fashion twist, with a bow that ties under the chin, and is very cute. She decided to make it. I fell in love. I had to make it. So having this original reference photo and Jess's tutorial to follow, I was excited to get into this project. Now, materials was fairly easy. I got 7-inch plastic cones, size road cones, the orange ones that we see all the time. Very easy, 7 inches tall. I got a set of 6 of them. Wool capeline in green, obviously. Some black Petersham ribbon. A black thread to match. I had some fabric scraps that I used. Also needed bowl for some water, some warm to hot water. I had a stone, some elastic that was 1/2 inch, a couple sewing pins, and I think that's really all that you're going to need. I used some extra things like my garment brush, but all in all, this was a fairly simple project and I really enjoyed doing it. So like I said, Jess has a tutorial on her Instagram where you can follow this. I thought it would be fun to just turn it into a video. Make sure to go over and check out her tutorial too if you have any questions, because that's where I got all of my information. So I'm very excited. Let's just get right into things because this was a ton of work. Okay, so getting started, I purchased 2 wool hoods. I got a black one and a green one. Today I'm going to be using the green one for this project. This was purchased on Etsy. I will link it below. I'm going to put this hood into a bowl of warm to hot water and let it soak. I ended up letting it soak for about 30 to 45 minutes, something in there. The color being green, it was easy to see when the entire cap had absorbed water into it. So while I let that soak, I prepped all of my other workstation with the things I was going to need to make this hat. So as you can see, I have small traffic cones. These are like children's toy size. They're 7 inches tall. I had cut the standing platform off of one of them, and I have that stacked on top of the other 5. So I have 6 cones in total that I'm slowly stretching this wool hood over. Now, this process was long and laborious. Um, One of the first things I did was cut off like the bottom 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit more, and then I started stretching it over the cone. I realized that the cone needed to be raised up, so I used a paper towel holder um, to give me a little more height, so it was an easier job pulling the wool hood down. As I got the top where I wanted it to be, I put an elastic band just wrapped around it to kind of hold it in place while I worked on the rest of it. This was a bit of like just pulling down, and then I was trying to also smooth it going side to side. I even used a stone to give me a little bit of friction while I was doing that because I wanted to get a nice tight fit to this cone and a nice clean edge at the bottom of it. When I felt like I was getting the cone into a good place, I took half-inch wide elastic and wrapped it around a few times and pinned it together to really hold it down at that base. This, I think, was really effective. Jess had used just a few elastic bands. I had this on my sewing table, so I felt like it was just easy to use and convenient. Now here I've moved on to the brim. I am just, instead of pulling down like I was for the crown, I'm just stretching it side by side and rotating it and moving it, trying to get a nice wide flat brim. Now this is wider than I'm going to actually keep it for the hat, but I am just stretching it out to the best of my ability to try and get this nice and wide because I want it to be really flat. Now, this process was the easier part of stretching this. I will say that. I enjoyed that far more. And yeah, I just kept stretching it and trying to get it nice and flat. Now, when I felt like it was like really stretched out and flat, I trimmed off a little bit more from the edge and I put it back onto my workspace. Now, I don't have an ironing board right now. I'm working with limited supplies. So I just have a wooden table that I have a towel down on. Don't judge. So I took it and I put it onto my workspace and I used my iron to steam and flatten the brim even more. And when I felt like it was in a good spot, I put the rubber band back on it and let it dry overnight. This is what it looked like the next day. Now, I took out all of the cones except for the one with the cutoff platform, so it still had some structure in there, and I went and ironed the base with some muslin fabric in between to protect it. Once I felt like that was nice and flat, I took out the cone and I started marking my brim width all around it. I went with 2.5 inches. I think that ended up working out great for me. I think anywhere from 1.5 inches to 3 inches could be a good brim size for this style of hat. 2.5 worked out great for me. I may make one with a larger brim in the future. I really liked making this hat, so I might make a ton more. We'll see. But I went around and I shaped or I made the line for the shape of the brim that I wanted, and I started cutting it out. Now, I cut this as meticulously as I could because I wanted a nice clean edge, because I wasn't sure if I was going to cover the edge like Jess did or leave it a little more plain. And I'll get into what I end up doing. I consulted the beautiful and glamorous Adele Mildred, milliner extraordinaire, beauty queen, and she gave me some tips. So here I just took the brush, my little garment brush, and just kind of brushed all the fibers in the same direction. Now I wanted to add a strap to the back, kind of like 40s tilt hats that I have. I cut out this black wool gabardine, 11 inches by 3.5 inches, and I will turn the long sides in twice at 1/4 inch. So all in all, they will be 2 inches by probably 10 1/4, something like that when they're finished. So I turned those in and pressed them, and I'll bring those over to the sewing machine in a second and just stitch those there. Now, I think that in the future, if I do this, I'm going to actually hand stitch these pieces. I don't like how the machine stitch looks on the front facing side of it, but it doesn't bother me enough to take them out and redo it again. So like I said, I'm just stitching these up. This was quick on the sewing machine, and I will bring them back over to the iron in a second. to work on the next piece, which is going to be a channel that elastic is threaded through so that there is some stretch to this band when it's on your head. Now here I'm using my pinking shears to do the edges. Those are actually my grandmother's pinking shears. I am so happy I have them. So I turned it in 1/4 of an inch and then 1/2 an inch. And then I pinned it to cool. And then I'm going to take a black hair elastic and I'm going to put it into those channels that I've made and stitch them in, which sounds silly. You could just use elastic, but I had a black elastic hairband and I knew that this was going to hold well. So I bring it over to the machine, stitch them in, and I'm actually really happy with this method. I will for sure be using a hairband again when I do this. I think it's sturdy and for sure will stay together. Now it was time to decide what the front was and pin my straps in accordingly. I did them at a bit of an angle so it will sit correctly on my head because I want it to sit like a tilt on the front of my head with the band going around the back. Now here I am hand stitching these in. I just did a classic straight hand stitch here. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to for sure hold them in. I am sitting in my bed, as you can see, because I had to retire to my heating pad after stretching and blocking this hat. I had set my hat up a little too high, and this is your learn from my mistakes moment. I set it up too high and I put too much stress on my shoulders and lower back when I was stretching the hood over the cone. And don't do that. I came out of it very sore. So I've sewn in the straps and now I am going to sew in some Petersham ribbon on the inside of the crown. Now, normally when you're doing hat making, you will iron the ribbon to get a curve into it, but you don't have to do that for the inside band because you'll put it back on the block and steam this once everything's finished, and it should take care of that shaping of the ribbon on the inside. So I'm just going to go through and hand stitch this. Now, I pinned it in and I was just going around in a circle stitching it. On the outside, it was about 1/4 inch up on the crown from the brim. I did this so that I knew that my stitches could be hidden by the ribbon that's going to go on the outside as decoration and also being put on just to cover some stitches too. So I did that. I made sure it was all about 1/4 of an inch up from the brim. Still tried to make them nice and even as I could because even though it wasn't going to be visible, I wanted to know that it was nice. I love hand sewing sometimes. I have to be in the mood for it, and I was this time. And it was nice to just sit down on the heating pad and do all of this hand stitching. Once I got the inside all taken care of, I will actually have to go over to the iron to do the next piece. But this is all after this, it's decorative ribbon work, I guess you'd say. So when I was unsure of what to do for this part, I consulted Adele Mildred, and she told me that I was correct in that I sew on the straps, sew the Petersham in the inside, and then do the same for the outside. And she made sure to tell me that you have to use cotton Petersham to get it to make the curve that you need for the outside, and I'll show you how I do that in a second. But I was very lucky that I was able to consult her. She has her company, Hood London. If you're not familiar, check them out. I will link them below also. Her hats are fantastic, and mine are garbage in comparison. So here I'm back over at the iron, and I am kind of pulling the one side of my ribbon while I iron it so that there gets to be a little bit of a curve. I measured it, got the right size, cut it with the pinking shears, and then ironed it a little bit more, and then I put it on my hat to test. It is the right size, so I'm going to go over to my bed again and do some hand sewing. So with this, I was going to be a little more meticulous than I was with the other hand sewing because I knew it was going to be covered. This was being sewn with the smallest stitch I could manage on the outside, and on the inside I was making sure it was being stitched through the ribbon on the inside so the black threads were blending in. So now how I've done that, you don't see any of my stitches on the inside or outside. They're nice and hidden in the black of the ribbons that I've used. I decided for decoration I wanted to go fairly simple with this, so I made a little 3-tiered bow that is going to be sewn on to cover the edge of this ribbon, and I actually really like how it ends up looking, and you'll see that a little bit more when I show you the full finished hat. But I made a little ribbon bow, and I think that was the right decoration for this one. Now, I wasn't sure how I wanted to finish the edge because Jess had done a ribbon covering the edge, and I like how that looks, and I was thinking about doing it, and then I thought I kind of really liked how it looked free, and I consulted Adele Mildred, and she told me that authentically on 30s hats there would have been a stitch that was about 1/8 or 1/5 of an inch in from the edge of the brim. Because the brim is so short, it didn't need to be wired or covered. So I decided to do this in black thread to carry the black design element throughout the entire hat. So here's just a little better look at the detailing on this hat on one of my head blocks. So I had a great time making this. This video was rushed to finish because I was waiting on materials up until Friday, yesterday, and if I missed anything in the editing process or just in how I explain things, please let me know in the comments because I'd love to help you be able to make one of these of your own. So now that you've seen this hat finished up, how I made it, I can tell you, like I said at the beginning, this was a long, hard process. I hurt my back and my shoulders doing it. So I really want to stress, find a comfortable place to do it when you make this hat because it's a lot of work. But it was fairly easy and the results were great. I have to thank Jess again for letting me use her tutorial and Adele Mildred for answering my questions that I had. I had so much fun making this project for you guys. I have another wool cape line, so would you guys like to see another hat video? I would love to make another style, something different in black, maybe with some feathers and things like that. Just do something a little exciting and different from this one. I love this hat so much. As you can see, the strap comes around the back and is secured on with some bobby pins right now. If my wig wasn't so big around, I probably wouldn't need bobby pins. I also could probably loop this strap under if I wanted. I made it long enough that it shouldn't be a problem. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Please follow the link below to my Patreon account if you think you'd love some extra content from me. And thank you again for watching. I will see you all next week.